Are you ready to face what lies beneath the water? In the depths of a dark lake, amid the fog, and on a night history will never forget, something appeared, something the human mind cannot comprehend. And now, the world knows nothing. No pictures, no evidence, only we saw and only we barely survived. We thought the story was over, but we were wrong, because the nightmare hasn't even begun. The Legend of the Lake Monster. We are now in the middle of the night, the place, beside Urquhart Castle, in a boat on the lake, with cold fog lazily resting over the still surface of the water, so that we can hardly see each other's faces. The boat sways gently. The time, late July of the year 1964. The event, Sir James McKillop has decided to prove his theory. In silence, he looks at his watch with its glowing hands, then looks at me, or so it seems to me, and at Maggie and Ewan, then says, pressing on every syllable of his words, "The time has come. Remember, gentlemen, there is still time to turn back. I want to hear your consent once more." Then he turned to Maggie, asking, "Maggie?" Maggie uttered a vague murmur, meaning, "Go on," and placed the necklace around her neck. Dr. Ismail, I knew that the gates of hell would open within minutes, and that God alone knew what the morning sun would reveal. Yet I was driven along a path I did not know where it would lead me, and I merely nodded in encouragement. "Please, continue." Sir James coughed slowly, then said as he reached into his pocket, "So be it." He took out the ivory horn from his pocket and blew into it. There is an old saying that every cave beneath the lakes of Scotland hides a terrifying mythical monster, and I did not know this saying at that time in the year 1964, and that was my fate. After every story of mine, I think I have reached wisdom. Then I discover, in my next adventure, that there is another peak I knew nothing about, and I realize what a fool I was yesterday, even what a naive man I was moments ago, and I imagine I have reached the ultimate understanding. But how did I not realize then that wherever I go, there are monsters and demons, and as long as there are monsters and demons, then I, inevitably, must face them. This is my fate, in which I have neither guilt nor merit, yet for the 1000th time, I admit that I was naive. That was not the first time I visited Scotland, nor was it the first time I entered the University of Dundee. I had come to this country before during the period of my scholarship when I obtained my doctorate, and I already had close friends there. The Scots are indeed English, but they differ greatly from the Englishmen you know. They are people of great kindness and warmth, free from coldness, arrogance, and gloom, and they are not hot-tempered like the Irish. At the University of Dundee, I had many cheerful stories and memories that were carved deep within me forever. And today, after about 10 years, I return to my dear friends of the past, Mackenzie, MacArthur, and McDavid, and I do not know why all Scottish surnames begin with Mac, and why more than half of their men are named Andrew. Remind me to ask about that if time permits. What matters is that I met my great professor, Sir James McKillop, and I was utterly fascinated by him. His graying hair, his strange sideburns, his thick eyebrows. He always made me feel as if he were one of those giants of medicine you see in great references, whose names are always preceded by the title Sir. Then there was his friendly simplicity, his elegant gestures full of dignity, and his logical mind. All of this made me adore him like a teenage girl adores her handsome teacher. He shook my hand warmly, and I was pleased that he remembered me after all these years. "Dr. Ismail, isn't that right?" The corner of my left lip trembled as I politely whispered, "Yes? Rifat Ismail, my failed student." I smiled awkwardly, embarrassed, not knowing how to respond, while he continued, "So, you have returned to Egypt and opened a private clinic where you suck the blood of poor peasants in your country, and you have forgotten everything about scientific research. Don't you remember that?" I cried out in panic, swearing that this had never happened, that I still owned nothing but my apartment in Cairo, and that I had never changed at all. Then why did you stop attending the London conferences? Should I tell him the reason, which might seem ridiculous to him? For a moment, I did not know how to explain until he suddenly surprised me with a more precise and embarrassing question. "Any news of our colleague, Dr. Richard Cummings?" I smiled awkwardly and said, pretending to be innocent, I haven't seen him since the hematology conference in the year 1959. That is the point exactly. He said it suspiciously, looking into my eyes with that steady gaze that used to tear apart all my lies and pretenses in the past. And he added, he invited you to his country house back then? Then, nothing. No news about him at all, except that he traveled to Australia, resigned from his job, and all his correspondence stopped. He didn't even leave an address to contact him. So do you know what happened at that time? You were the closest to him and the last one who saw him. It was clear that I would have to tell the story of the mummy of Count Dracula and Catherine's transformation into a vampire, or what she tried to convince me of, and my escape into the dark, and everything that could bring upon me the mockery of this great professor, or his doubts about my sanity. The truth is that I had buried this bitter memory deep in my mind and covered it with tons of the dust of daily troubles. I did not want it to return again to spoil my life. I said to Sir James mysteriously, "It's a long story. Then you will tell it to me tonight." "Here? No. I'm inviting you to my mansion in Inverness-shire to spend the weekend, and there we will have a wonderful evening in which you'll tell me everything. There's a full program waiting for you." I tried to avoid it because, frankly, I no longer felt very comfortable with these English professors' invitations to their homes. For the full program, Dr. Richard Cummings had prepared for me was spending the night beside Dracula's mummy with a teenage vampire. So what full program had this man prepared for me? But he was firm in his invitation, and I did not have the guts, as the English say metaphorically for courage, to refuse it. My mansion is just a few steps away from Loch Ness. He said that with a wink, assuming I knew the significance of the name he pronounced. But I didn't know any significance for it, and the only thing that caught my attention was the letter Koch that he pronounced with strength and confidence. The Scots use the K sound often in their speech, giving a strange impression to the ear, so I repeated after him, questioning, "Loch Ness?" "It means Lake Ness. You know that all Scottish lakes begin with the word loch, except for Lake Menteith. The word loch means lake." I understood. I didn't really know much about Scotland. He sighed and said, "That's your problem. You spent 2 years here studying, yet you never even tried, not even once, to learn something about the country where you studied. Isn't it time for that?" "Yes, but enough excuses. You must arrange your affairs, and we'll meet here exactly at 5 o'clock. And remember," then he looked at me with a meaningful glance, "Maggie will be there? Maggie will be there." The mines exploded one after another in the sea of my memories. Maggie, the delicate, fragile girl who could walk over grass without bending a single blade. Those blue, honest, innocent eyes that made you feel like a devil. That wild golden hair. The hands clasped together in the streets of Edinburgh. The youthful dreams. And my clumsy attempts to appear to her as a seasoned man and a gentleman. And her naive attempts to appear to me as a mysterious woman who understood life. Then we would drop our masks and laugh like children. Maggie was Sir James's only daughter, and she was studying physics at the University of Dundee when we met. Somehow I realized that her father did not object to our relationship, if he wasn't actually encouraging it. Days passed, and our emotions reached that peak beyond which there could only be descent. When the scholarship term ended, she said to me tenderly, "Stay here, Rafat. Stay with us. Father will find you a respectable job in his hospital, and we'll be happy." I said to her gently, "Come with me, Maggie, to Egypt, to my warm, sunny country and my kind people. We'll be happy. I can't leave my studies and my country. And I can't betray my country that sent me on this scholarship. I won't leave my mother and my sister." It was a long, fruitless discussion, and in the end we reached one important agreement, that we would never agree, and we separated. For 2 years we continued corresponding, and then, you know how these things happen. I can't even remember who stopped writing first, but we did stop indeed. There remained in my soul only a faint trace of her, like the memory of a child's moist kiss on your cheek. It soon dries, but it leaves a refreshing afterglow in your spirit for a while. Maggie will be there. And there, in the elegant dining room, I met her again after all those years. Dr. Rifat, I believe. She said it playfully as she shook my hand, that cold, glass-like hand I once feared to kiss. I bowed awkwardly and mumbled, "Miss McKillop, you've changed a lot. Now, at the threshold of 40, she was far from that fragile creature I had once adored. She had become a woman, and how that disappointed me. Yet I was ready to revive every ounce of love I had once felt for her, if only she could prove to me that her soul had not changed. Of course, she wasn't married yet, as long as she hadn't objected to my calling her Miss McKillop. I fear you've become more handsome, and I fear you've become more enchanting." She sat beside me at the table, while Sir James sat at its head. To his right was a beautiful lady in her mid-30s, whom he introduced to us as Mrs. Elizabeth Gold, the widow of the late Commander Rhett Gold. To his left sat a sharp-eyed woman he introduced as Constance White, and beside her was her husband, an old bald man who kept glancing at me with wary, mysterious eyes. It was an exquisitely arranged feast, so refined that swallowing any bite of it seemed an effort not to be underestimated. As for Maggie, she was alarmingly friendly, never stopping her chatter for a moment, while I was lost in my own private battle with table manners, trying not to appear rude or barbaric in the eyes of these pretentious people. So I limited my responses to her words with forced nods, meaning that her talk was very amusing indeed. At last, dinner was over. The butler led us with solemn dignity through a long corridor adorned with old oil paintings, with knights' armors standing on either side, holding their lances as if ready to fight a new battle. On the wall stretched a massive ancient tapestry depicting scenes from the history of Scotland. That atmosphere, one could hardly believe it truly existed, that it was really there, and yet it stirred the imagination to its farthest limits. What you have just heard is only one chapter of a long novel, a journey that has not ended yet, and secrets that have not all been revealed. In the upcoming parts, you will find the truth becoming more mysterious, and the events more thrilling. So be ready, because the story has not spoken its final word yet.